Ledger is a writing podcast and one draft in a long line of drafts. I'm your host, Austin Wilson. Welcome to today's show where I'm chatting with Juliette Lin. She's a USC graduate who was accepted into Lena Waithe's Hillman Grad Foundation, and she's also a 2026 Writers Guild Foundation support staff trainee. We get into all of that stuff and what it means. Lena Waithe's Hillman Grad Foundation is also just a really, really big deal. It's so cool that she got in. Juliette stopped by to talk about what that was like. She got to work with casting directors to cast the show that she got to do a mock writer's room for. She learned a ton. She also talks about how improv classes after she graduated from USC helped her refine her writing and sort of figure out who she was and do a lot of self-advocacy for her skills. She's also a cancer survivor. She has an amazing story. There's a ton of awesome stuff that we get to talk about, but this is a really, really great episode to listen to for anyone who is either getting ready to graduate from a film program or just any degree and want to go into screenwriting. Like, Juliette is at the point now where she can talk about a lot of stuff that's going to have impact and directly deal with what your life is like if you're pre-WGA like Juliette is currently, but you are still writing, producing work, submitting to other fellowships. That's another thing she talks about. Just because she got into Hillman does not mean she left Hillman and then is just immediately a professional screenwriter. There's still a lot more work to do, and she's doing it. And we talk about all those things. It's a great conversation. I was so glad that she stopped by. Check out her website, Juliette Lin Writes. That's Lin. I'll have a link in the show notes. Check out my stuff, as always, austinrwilson.com. Go to mosshartbooks.com, and definitely follow me on Substack, austinrwilson.substack.com. I'm doing a lot more stuff on there. And starting in April, I am going to be doing at least one free flash fiction story a month. I do have paid subscriptions turned on, but it's really just a way to support the show and support other stuff that I do. If you want to do that, everything's still going to be delivered. If people want to support the show, they can. That's one way to do it. So go there, like, subscribe, rate, and review the show, do all of those things. Share this to everyone who potentially is like, hey, I'm a pre-WGA writer. What's it like? How do I go about doing the things I need to do? And Juliette talks about a lot of that stuff, specifically applying to fellowships and how it's not necessarily cheap, but there's a lot of stuff out there that want to support writers and help people starting their career. So that's a big part of what we talk about in this interview. So thank you for listening. Thank you to Juliette for stopping by. Here's our chat. Graduated from USC in 2017. You have a business and cinematic arts degree, and then you are a Hillman graduate, Lena Waithe's program. We'll get into that, but that was in 2025. Let's talk about the timeline between graduating and beginning the Hillman program and how your lead up to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you mentioned, I graduated in 2017. I was in the USC Business and Cinematic Arts program. So, it was mainly a business degree with an emphasis in the business side of the entertainment industry. So, we learned about producing, marketing, we learned about video games, just like the history of film and TV, kind of the future of TV and film and where it's going. And when I graduated, I had produced a few short films. I had produced a pilot for my friend. My friends and I worked at the student-run television station, and we ran like a live TV show, and I had done some like internships in production and at a talent agency. So that was kind of my experience at USC. And then when I graduated, I decided more to focus on my business degree and get a job working at a startup just to build up a financial foundation, because I knew from talking to people that had graduated before me, they were working as assistants, they were trying to pursue this creative industry while maybe working a part-time job. And for me, I just thought that I could maybe, like, I didn't have to go and pursue these dreams like right away. I could build the foundation so that I could feel comfortable to take a risk when it was time. And honestly, at that time, I was kind of like, I don't know what I want to do in this industry. I'd taken one screenwriting class at USC, and that was kind of the extent of it. So from 2017, when I graduated, up until like end of 2019, I was working at this job. It was great. I met a lot of different people. It was like a membership organization. So it was like people, young professionals, like 30 to 50, that were kind of looking for a place to gather with people across all different sectors and just see like where that synergy could come together. So there were people in the arts, there were people in science, there were people in tech. So I feel like that was like a really great like stomping ground for me to just like get my mind exposed to all these different things. And I actually met a comedian and a theater, like he owned a theater company, and they both encouraged me to get into improv. And I was like so shy and timid at the time. They're like, just do it as like professional development. It'll help you because you work events as well. It'll just help you be able to talk to people more. So I think that kind of was the catalyst for me to get back into creativity in a funny way. So I took that improv class. I remember I finagled it with work because my boss was on the East Coast. I was in LA at the time. And I was like, would it be possible for me to work East Coast hours, like basically LA time, like 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. so I can take this class at UCB at like 3:30 in person. And they let me do it, which was so nice of them. And then, yeah, I guess fast forward a little bit at the end of 2019, I was kind of like, you know what? Like this creative thing that I was exploring at USC, I never really went full force with it. And so I had built up enough money that I was like, I think I can quit my job, which is really scary, and just see what I want to do. At that time, I had like a YouTube channel. I was trying to be like a bullet journaling girly, like showing all my different layouts. And I wanted to start a podcast, which was about taking a leap of faith and pursuing creativity. So I was like, I actually have to quit the job so I could talk to people about doing it authentically. And then, of course, 2020 pandemic happens. Everything gets shut down anyway. So I was kind of already used to kind of building my own schedule, working remotely, doing all this stuff. It worked out. And then, kind of a pivot, was randomly diagnosed with cancer in the middle of the pandemic. Super random, not something I foresaw in my life, but I was grateful I took that break because part of me is like, if I hadn't taken that time for myself, I might not have even noticed the signs. I might have been so wrapped up in work. So I was ultimately grateful for that. And then basically went through 5 months of chemo. That brought us to like the end of 2020. And then start of 2021, I was like, you know what? I had cancer, I survived. It's time for me to do the creative thing. So I started taking classes. Another class at UCB, it was like storytelling. It was like telling stories from your real life, like on stage, like you would see at the Moth, or like Hassan Minhaj is one of my like main influences with Homecoming King and like a lot of the stuff he's come out with. So that was kind of the start of the journey, telling my own stories. From there, I took more improv classes. This was all online, by the way, because it was still pandemic. Everything was still shut down. But I think it made it in a way more accessible for me because the things I would normally be scared to do, it made it more possible. And then I took sketch writing. And I feel like that's kind of what reignited the actual writing more in the like, that was for stage, but also for screen because it was on Zoom. We were writing to be in these Zoom windows of like, it's like a scenario where you're all office workers and you're on a Zoom and like the chaos that happens. And yeah, so 2021 was kind of that year of creative exploration, taking a bunch of classes. I was taking acting classes as well. And the first half-hour pilot I tried to write was about my cancer journey. It was about like getting diagnosed, living at home with your parents, what that kind of brings up for you. I was kind of like, it's not that good, but you just have the thing you have to write. And then I think 2022, 23 is when I took an actual pilot writing class at UCB with Achilles Stamatilaki. He was a writer on Broad City. He's now written a lot of like audio dramas for Audible, and I really love and I love Broad City. So I took his class. I wrote an actual pilot with the actual structure. It was like a half-hour mockumentary set in the Department of Sanitation in New York because my girlfriend used to work with the Department of Sanitation. So there's just a lot of funny stories and like teaching people about the world of trash. And then, yeah, sorry, long-winded, getting to the end of it. And then 2024, I started submitting to competitions because I heard that's kind of what you do, just kind of see where your placements are, how is your writing stacking up to other people. And I probably spent about like $350. I'm just trying to be transparent because it is, it does cost money to do these things. And a lot of times it's really for the accolades, but I got like a quarter finalist for the We Screenplay Diverse Voices program. And I was like, okay, cool, a placement. Like someone's read my work and been like, let's move it on to the next thing. But I was like, obviously, my writing is not at the level to advance to semifinals or finals. So I feel like that was a good indicator for me of where my writing was at. And then I went back to the cancer pilot, wrote it completely different as like this girl after she's survived cancer moves to New York City and is like having a whole Broad City type adventure, running around trying to like get her meds that have been stolen on her first day moving there. And then 2024 randomly started a mentorship program not related to entertainment at all. It was for like queer women, non-binary and trans folks, and it was across all different industries. I wanted to be a mentor for actors, and I just wanted to help facilitate those introductions. And then a lovely TV writer named T Ho applied to be a mentor, and they've written for Poker Face, they've written for The Sympathizer, they've written for We Were the Lucky Ones. And I was like, wait a second. Like, actually, maybe I can apply to have this person be my mentor. And lo and behold, they read my application, chose me as their mentee. Um, and yeah, they did transparently. They were like, I don't know if I should be your mentor because you're building this program for other people. Do you really need it? But they were like, in your application, I understood what we could do in this time together. So yeah, so getting near the end. So then from there, 2025 was kind of the year of the mentorship program. And in that first month in January, I was like, hey, I saw that you did a bunch of like these fellowship programs. What do you think? The Hillman Grad application is actually coming up like February 2nd or something. It was like a week out from our first meeting in January. I was like, my pilot's actually not done. I haven't written the third act. Like, should I apply? And they're like, just do it as a deadline. All of these fellowship applications really help you to understand your voice, the types of stories you're trying to tell. So I was like, all right, I'll just speed run it, finish it. They gave me notes on the application, sent it off, didn't think anything of it. And then heard back a couple weeks later, like, you made it to the semifinals, did the interview, got in. And then that was really like my first, I feel like, big industry win, aside from obviously like T choosing me as their mentee and getting the quarterfinals. So yeah, that was last year. It concluded in September. And then I've just been kind of applying to different fellowships since then, doing more writing, trying to reach out to folks to get rep, to get staff, to be an assistant in a room, just like anything to kind of get my foot in the door. But that is kind of the long, comprehensive story from 2017 to 2025.
Well, that is a lot of I have so many things I want to ask you about now because there's a lot in there that I didn't expect, honestly. And
Oh,
I saw your degree was in business and cinema arts, but I think I had this I how so first of all, before I get to the like other main questions, like had you been writing in your life before going to USC, or was USC really about business? And like I'm so
yeah.
curious if you got there and you were like, I feel like pulled towards creativity, or it makes me think you probably had creativity in you always, just
Mm.
in some other fashion. Tell me if that's right or
Yeah,
wrong.
I think growing up, a testament to like my parents and especially my mom, like she would take my sister and I to the library every weekend, and we would come home with just like a stack of books that we would read throughout the week. So I think we were always reading, always interested in storytelling. Every like birthday or holiday, she would go to Michael's and get us like some type of craft kit, whether it's like making soap or making stickers, just like random creative things. So I think that's always been in our heads. And then in like eighth grade, I think is kind of like, this was like 2008, but like in 2006 is when YouTube started. And I feel like people were posting their own videos and I was seeing representation of people that looked like me. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. So I feel like my storytelling started in like trying to be a YouTuber. One of my first videos was just like a stop motion post it thing that I do with my friends at a sleepover, where like there's like a Pac-Man eating the post-its, and then at the end it does like a wink and it's like a reference to a random meme. I did like another stop motion that was like little turtles that were invading, I don't know, something. So I feel like I've always just had like that interest in storytelling. And then by the time I got to high school, I took video production, and that was like we were writing our own scripts, we were shooting them, we were in our own stuff, didn't have an acting class under my belt at all. So we were just winging it, editing, all that stuff. So I think in high school is really where I found that love of like video production, of storytelling on screen. And when I was thinking about going to college, I think I had this insecurity of like, I'm not strong enough to be a filmmaker. I think we had people in our class who had really expensive gear. They knew like lighting, they knew all the stuff, and their stuff looked beautiful. And I was like, oh, my stuff doesn't look like that, you know? So I was like, I don't think I can be a creative, but I was like, what am I good at? I'm good at math. And my parents are both entrepreneurs, like they own their own businesses. My mom's an accountant, my dad's a financial advisor. So I was like, great. I'm good at business. I can be a business person. I can facilitate the creative introductions. That can be my role because I love the film industry. I'm just not a creative. That is what I thought. And so going into college, I never had this idea of being a screenwriter or in front of the camera. It was just kind of like helping other people facilitate their dreams. And I think, yeah, the screenwriting class was so hard for me. We literally had to write like 3-page scripts. And it
Yeah.
was so hard for me because I just didn't know what to pull from. I maybe didn't think my stories were interesting. And then I think at some point, like post college, because I graduated 2017. 2018 is when Crazy Rich Asians came out. And then a little bit after, like to All the Boys That Love Before, kind of like this new resurgence of Asians in media. And I was like, oh, people are interested in our stories. I have interesting stories to tell. Then obviously with the cancer, it's like, okay, that's definitely an interesting story. I mean, it's like I probably gaslit my whole time being like, I don't have anything interesting to say. All of everyone's stories are interesting, but I think the cancer was a definitive thing that I couldn't possibly tell myself
Yeah.
this isn't interesting. And so I think that's kind of what brought me back to storytelling in a weird way.
So briefly before we move on, have you since, because I know what you mean when you talk about, these people had the gear, they had the knowledge, they know about f stops, or whatever the things that you need to know. And I struggled with that previously too, and it helped me to see other people making things, and especially now on YouTube, like Kane Parsons made this horror short on YouTube, and now A24 is releasing it. Like the world's completely different now than even 10 years, 5 years, whatever. Have you since then, or do you still kind of struggle with the idea that good gear is what is needed, or do you know now that it's like, "Yeah, shoot it on whatever. If it's good, it'll push through."
I think I do feel like storytelling is the most important. And I feel like, especially with artists that are like shooting stuff completely on iPhone and editing very simply, it's like, yeah, that stuff matters. Obviously, you want good visual quality, you want good audio quality. But after that, it's like all those are extra. If the story's not there, it's not going to land. And I think there were people in high school that had all that film equipment. Their stuff looked so good, and they actually didn't get into USC's film school. So to me, in my head at the time, I was like, well, they had all the gear and they had all that stuff. If they're not getting in, how are people getting in? But now looking back, it's like, well, maybe the story wasn't fully there. Maybe he didn't exactly know how to explain what he's trying to say. What are the messages? Because I think that is ultimately what is important. So yeah, I do have a different view on it now. And I think like last November, I just shot something with my friends like over a weekend, and it was like a DSLR, basic audio equipment. And it was fun. And I was like, we got to tell the story and it doesn't have to be that crazy. So yeah, I think it's shifted.
Yeah, I was talking to someone last year and I foolishly said quality doesn't matter. And I'm like, let me rephrase. Quality does matter, but only to a certain point. Because, yeah, if the
Yeah.
story is good, like it doesn't matter if you shot it on a 16 millimeter or whatever it is, like the story and the way it connects with people is the thing. The other thing that you said that I didn't expect was your connection to improv and
Mm-hmm.
the ways in which that maybe has helped form you as a writer. I weirdly will be teaching a sketch writing class here soon and have been hanging
Oh,
out at
exciting.
the local improv place a lot. And that has always been important to me. It's always something that I've been afraid of, like that
Yeah.
spotlight where I have to do something immediately because everyone is expecting it.
Yeah.
Everyone is there expecting it. So talk to me a little bit about the journey from improv, your introduction into that world, and the ways in which you feel like it has formed you as a TV writer.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with improv is learning that no idea is that precious. Like, I feel like as screenwriters, we're often like, what is that one story I can tell that's going to be so impactful? Like, you're digging, digging, digging. And in improv, it's like you're on stage and you're up there. Words better come out of your mouth and you're going to figure it out together. And it's like someone can create a character, you can come up with the scenario of where you're at. Like, improv, it's really like, who are the characters? What is their relationship to one another? Where are they and what are they doing? That's like the basic elements. And it's like you can go anywhere from there. So I feel like that was really helpful for me as a perfectionist, as someone that is like so like these stories must be so important. It's like nothing matters. Just throw stuff out there. Inevitably, like your voice will come through, like your sense of humor will come through, your perspective will come through these characters. So it really doesn't matter. I feel like that was the big thing. Obviously, the like yes anding of it all, of never saying like that's not true or I don't believe what you just said, like negating that. Like you can tell so quickly with the live audience, like, oh, you just killed it, you know what I mean? Or it's like you just made other people feel deflated, like they couldn't add, they don't know where to go. And like especially in Hillman Grad, being in like our mock writers room and giving each other feedback on each other's work, and being in sketch teams as well, it's like you always want to be like, oh, I love that idea, and also how about this, or like I love that and that made me think of this completely different thing. So I feel like it just kind of works the muscle of like always coming up with new stuff, always being flexible, adaptable, and just like being silly and being like, we're all just here to have a fun time.
Do you think that it helped you, or I guess maybe what was your relationship already before with failure, with someone telling you no, or with someone rejecting a thing that you maybe did? Like, did you have a solid foundation, I guess, to put it a weird way, with having rejection or feeling, because yeah, if you're on stage and you're doing improv and it's bombing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I do actually think that is why improv was so confronting to me, because I had such a fear of failure. And I
Yeah.
think, you know, testament to my parents for like I feel like always keeping me safe and always protecting me. And also like when I reflect back when I was younger, the only I feel like thing I could wish is that if I maybe told my parents like, "Hey, it's okay to let me fail. Like I'll figure it out," because I don't think they were always like think 10 steps ahead. If this happens, what are you going to do? If this happens, what are you going to do? What's your self face? Fail safe. I think as a child of immigrants, like they're just always so concerned about your safety and protecting you. But it's like that sometimes prevents you from improv, which is like stepping out there without having a clue what you're gonna say, right? And being able to feel like I can figure it out on the fly. And yeah, in high school, I was like a straight A student. I had a 4.4 GPA. Like I never, if I got 100% on a test, my mom would be like, there was a bonus question, why didn't you get 101? You know what I mean? So it's, I think in those ways, it was always just like you have to always keep achieving and doing the best and not being able to fail. So I do think improv like really forced me to be like, it's okay to let go of all that and just kind of take it as it is. And if something's not working, you just change it up. And I think that
Yeah.
was maybe in college, like my issue with screenwriting. It's like I thought I had to sit there and write everything out perfectly in one session and be like, this is the perfect script. Here you go. And it's like later you learn it's all in the revision, you know?
Oh yeah, when I learned this is not the thing. This is not the finished thing. No matter
Mm-hmm.
how finished I think it is not the thing. No
Yeah.
matter what I'm making, if it's a novel, graphic novel, poem, whatever, there will be all of these iterations afterwards, which is another reason why I think improv is so freeing, because even if there are iterations, like maybe you hang on to an idea that you can use later on, like you are making the thing. It
Yeah.
is that moment right there. And I think it really changes something in us. So I was so happy to hear that you had done it and had taken those classes, and because I'm so curious in the ways in which it affects how we free ourselves while we're writing a screenplay.
Yeah, I think so. And I think I definitely see it when I'm in a room with people, because I think that bouncing off each other's ideas and just always like thinking, how can we escalate? How can we heighten? Like that is always like something I'm thinking about. Sometimes when you're writing and you're by yourself, because there isn't that bounce back, it's not as like like sometimes I wish I could improv with myself a little bit more, but I'm sure that's just like another skill to keep practicing.
So I'm curious then, before we jump into the Hillman stuff, I'm curious if you've written with other people, like, because I know there was a writer's room at Hillman where you guys got to do like a mock writer's room. And I'm curious what your experiences were with writing, if you did feel solitary or if the things that you got to do leading up to Hillman had sort of engendered this feeling of like writerly camaraderie, or where'd you go with your mind and your emotions with
Yeah,
writing?
that's interesting. I mean, I think what was so helpful about taking the UCB pilot writing class is we had an instructor giving us feedback. We also had a room of people giving us feedback. So I feel like that was what helped me kind of get to like a good pilot. And then my friend Suji and I, who's also an actor and a writer, we teamed up and we're like, why don't we write a web series about two queer Asian actors trying to make it in New York City. Or our characters weren't actors, but just two queer Asians in New York City. And that was really fun because I feel like sometimes if you're sitting there in your room and you're like, I need to write an episode, you could sit there all day and not do anything. When you're sitting with your friend and you're just silent, it's like, all right, no, like one of us just has to say something, and then you'll bounce back and forth. And I feel like when you have that synergy, it works so well. I feel like the first day we even started talking about the web series, we're like, okay, like here's an episode idea, here's another episode idea. We started outlining and we were able to write together. So I think the process just happens more quickly when you're able to like verbalize it sometimes, and also just be like, I don't know, when you're taking someone else's time, you're like, we have 3 hours today, like what are we gonna do? When you're by yourself and you're like, I have 3 hours, it's like, well, I could do it in another 3 hours, or I could do it tomorrow. So I think there are just some inherent pressures that help. And then the other thing before Hillman is I was on a few different sketch teams, which I feel like most similarly simulated that like mock writers room, where we would, even from the pitch idea, like every for one of the sketch teams, we would bring in 3 pitches every session. People would ideate on those like pitches, they'd give us ideas, they'd take it to different places. Then from those pitches we'd decide which two we like the best. We'd bring in fully written sketches, and then people would pitch again. And then also the actors would be like, we would pull things from their lived experience or their personalities and stuff. So I feel like those were kind of the experiences that I had, like working closely with other people, that helped me with that skill.
Yeah, even if you're not co-writing a thing, I really do think being near other people, like writers groups, I run a writers group at the improv place that I'm going to be teaching at. I run as many writers groups and go to as many writers groups as I can, because I just saw someone talking about it today online, talking about how like it's so easy to not write when you're by yourself. But
Hmm.
if you're in
Yeah.
front of other people who are writing, you're like, well, we're here to write, and I don't want to be over here not writing while we're supposed to be writing.
Yeah, totally.
Sort of trick that even though there's, no one's making you do it, but
Yeah, of course, but you're seeing other people and you're like, all right, we got to do it. And the other thing I just remembered from what you're talking about is I think also in giving other people feedback, I feel like that helped me so much because I'm like, when I'm reading other people's work, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And what about this? And what about that? But when I read my own work, I don't necessarily always think that, because you're criticizing yourself. You're saying, well, this isn't better than the last thing that I said. And I'm not like thinking to my friend, like, well, is my thing funnier than your thing? It's like, no, it's just another thing. Maybe that'll help you think of another thing. So I think it's also helped me to be like, just put it all out there, and it'll just be a consistent feedback loop.
I seriously agree 100%. Like, this will be the fourth year that I read scripts for the Austin Film Festival. And since starting reading scripts for the film festival, I really do think it like changed a portion of my brain,
Mm,
because once I started reading other people's scripts, first of all, I loved it. I fell in love with it immediately. But I really felt like it put this other form of energy in me,
yeah.
so that when I sat down to write my scripts, it was almost like I had never sat down to write a script before. Like, it changed me that much, where I was like, "Holy shit, I can't believe I haven't been doing this forever." And like you said, giving other people feedback, it's not, "Is your thing better than my thing?" It's like, "Let's make that thing as good as we can."
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
it's its own thing. Let's make it as good as we possibly can. I love it so much. So I'm glad you said that, because that really has changed my own writing. And I've told so many people, like, do whatever you can to read other people's work.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
obviously get your work read, but you should also try to be offering to read as many other people's as works as you can manage.
Yeah, of
Don't.
course, of course.
So Hillman, let's talk about getting accepted, how that felt, what the process was like. I know everyone out there will be pumped to hear like the path that led you into as soon as you got there, and just like what it felt like to be in a program that's a really prestigious one, and that is kind of singular, not in
Mm.
every way, but there's part of it that I mean, I would just love to know everything about it.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, starting from getting accepted, the funny story is that I interviewed like on, let's say, a Thursday, and they were like, "You'll probably know after the weekend." So like, but like by Friday or over the weekend. So every day I was just like, "Did they email me? Did they email me?" I'm like checking. They didn't do anything. Then Monday, I'm like suffering the whole weekend. I'm like, maybe I didn't get in. Monday, I think rolls around, and I get a text from one of the coordinators. Shout out to Anderlyn, and she's like, "Hey girl, we've been trying to reach you. Like, can you call us back when you get a chance?" And I realized I had turned my phone on do not disturb, so I missed all the phone calls. And then she's like, "No, I totally get it. Like our generation, we don't pick up phones from random people." I'm like, "No, I was just being so dumb." Obviously, I didn't say that, but I was like, "Yeah," I was like, "I'm out getting bobo right now, but I will call you as soon as I get back." Like, so ridiculous. Like, I'm trying to be so professional, and I'm like, I just goofed on that one. So, anyways, I like called him back, and Michael, who's the director of the writing program, he's on the call with Andrew, the coordinator, and he's like, "How's your day going?" I'm like, "Yeah, great. I just got boba." He's like, "Well, great. I want to make your day even better. Like, you got into Hillman." I was like jumping up and down. I was so excited. My girlfriend was there, and like she obviously knew I was waiting for the call, and like she could see I was jumping up and down, so she obviously knew I got in, and so it was really exciting. And then it all happened really fast because even from submission to the interviews, it was like a couple weeks, and then from the interviews, it was like we're going to be starting in LA in another couple weeks. So I think it was just like so much to wrap my head around. And every day I would go to my girlfriend like 10, 20 times a day and be like, "Babe, guess what? I got into Hillman Grad." Like, I don't know. I think just like,
Celebrate it, yeah.
yeah, I think it's so important, like no matter where you are in your career, but especially early on to just like celebrate all these wins. Cause I think we're always looking for the next step and the next step and like, okay, but we're here. How do we get there? And it's like, let's soak in the moment a little. So I was trying to remind myself that. And then obviously, I've been a fan of Lena Waithe for so long from like Master of None. I watched her series 20s. I did a deep dive into a lot of her work even after getting into the program, which made me even more excited just like about her voice and the stories that she tells and the creatives that she champions. So I really felt so honored to be part of the program, and they invest so many resources towards us. They really clearly care about all of our distinct voices and making sure to like help us hone whatever it is we want to say. So yeah, most of the program was done virtually, but our beginning of the program was in person so we could all meet each other. They brought us back in the middle and at the end. So I think it was really an incredible program. I'm sure I can dive into more of like the different aspects of it, but yeah, that was kind of my initial response when I got in.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like celebrating and taking time to be like, isn't this amazing?
Yeah.
Like this is awesome. This big thing happened. I think that's so important. So yeah, talk to me about that first meeting out there, because it was you and seven other people.
Yeah. Yeah, it was awesome. Well, so with Hillman, the special thing about it is that there's a writing cohort, which is 8 of us. Then there's also an acting cohort, which is another 8 people, and then an executive track, which is 4 people. So there were actually 20 of us, and then the 3 advisors for those 3. Then we had a few coordinators and like other people on staff. So the first time we met was like a big dinner with everybody. It was really casual. They just wanted us to get to know each other, which I think was really helpful because it helped us build this camaraderie of like just knowing each other outside of just like writers or actors or whatever. And I feel like we were all just excited like about whatever this thing was going to be. And then we got to go onto the Warner Brothers lot for like our first actual meetings, and we were like, "Oh my god, this is so official." We're like on the lot walking around. I remember like during a lunch break we all like went, and like Abbott Elementary is one of my favorite shows, and we got to see like some of the Abbott set. So I feel like it just kind of legitimized us in a way. It made us feel like we were working towards this dream. This was like kind of a stepping stone along the way. And then in that first session, we really focused on pitching ideas. We had to bring 3 ideas to the table. We got to hear everybody's. And then the big thing that Michael asked us was like, don't, like, he kind of gave us advice on how to give feedback, which is not like to criticize or pick it apart, obviously, but it's like to ask questions like, oh, what are you intrigued by? What do you want to know more about? And I feel like that actually really helped us to understand which project we wanted to work on. So that was fun. And then we did one other like kind of branding exercise for fun where we wrote like 3 words that described us, and then he would read them and then be like, guess who in the room this is. And I think that was really helpful to just kind of be like, if you had to distill yourself into just 3 words, not even just as a writer, as a person, off of first impressions or who you are, like, does it match, what other people think? Is it different? So yeah, overall, it was just a great experience.
I think that's such a fun, or at least I think it's fun, but I think we probably are of the same cloth because I that to me is, even though we're doing this creative thing and maybe some people would bristle against the idea that you're also selling yourself, there is an aspect of the business where or not even just the business, just the art, like unless you I was just talking about this the other day with my wife, so it's on my brain, but if you are intending your art to be interacted with by anyone, then there is an aspect of it that has to be connected to you. That's how I think anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, and you kind of cannot disconnect those two things in 2026. Potentially you could, in older eras, but now no. So I think that's such an interesting thing for them to do. And do you think that played a part into how you thought of yourself going forward?
I think I need to like pull up that notebook and figure out what 3 words I wrote, but I'm pretty sure it was like bubbly or like bubblegum because my hair was pink at the time. I was trying to be like indicating, but also like trying to not. It might have been like sparkle or so. I was wearing like a denim jacket with sparkles, but I think my work is very hopeful and it's very
Yeah.
joyful. So I was trying to like encapsulate that. And then something that was probably like that indicates like a sweet sassiness.
Yeah.
So I do think it was fun and it did make me think a little bit deeper. Um, and yeah, I can't remember what other people's words were, but it was so interesting because I was like, oh yeah, some of these are so spot on, or some of these are like maybe later when I read their work, I was like, oh, I totally get it, but this wouldn't have been what I thought up front. But yeah, I do think like branding, I feel like is such like an icky word for a lot of people, but it really is just like knowing yourself. And
Mhm.
especially me being like a business minded person, I feel like that's always something like you got to know what your voice
Yes.
is and what you're selling or what you're offering.
I agree branding is an icky word, and I think self-advocacy is not necessarily a one-to-one replacement, but I do think being someone who advocates for your work and who advocates for your skills and the things that you know and are proud about, I think that's we touched on it a little bit already, like your relationship with failure, but the idea of being empowered to self-advocate, to be
Mhm.
like, "No, no, 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 like, I have a thing that needs to be heard," or "I believe this thing that I have, should be heard." Talk to me about where your, like, level of advocacy was maybe before Hillman, or even just kind of a journey that you've been on for, like, advocating for yourself as a creative.
Interesting. I mean, I think in general in life, I feel like I really had to learn to advocate for myself like when I had cancer because it's
Yeah.
like you live or die. You know what I mean? Like that is actually life and death stakes, or you have to speak up, you have to tell people what your needs are, you have to like put yourself in front of them. So I feel like that in general just helped me because I used to be such like self-sufficient, don't want to ask people for help, don't want to bother people. So it was helpful in that sense. I think as a creative, I think honestly, like doing all the fellowship applications really helped me with that because in 2024, 2025, I applied to like 20 fellowship programs. And it's like people see all this success, like you got into Hillman, you got into the Writers Guild Foundation, you got into all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, but do you know how many other things I was applying to, and how many times I was tweaking my bio, how many times I was trying to re explain the type of projects that I write? Like how many times I tried to pull different themes and see what worked. And I feel like you have to go through that process because you can't expect that someone else is going to read your work and then put it together. Like you have to be packaging yourself and being like, this is who I am, and deliver it to people on a silver platter. Because to your point, like in 2026, there's so many creatives, there's so many people, and like anyone could technically, do a fine job, but it's like, what is that special thing that you're going to bring? And I feel like, yeah, so I feel like I'm always trying to like find ways to like pitch myself or advocate for myself, and just explain to people why I'd be the best candidate for XYZ.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard too. I mean, I think imposter syndrome is a thing people talk about a lot, and I was just reading about it last night, in fact, and the ways in which we reject ourselves before we get the possibility to be out there. And I at least am always on a journey to be like, no, 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 like it's okay. Advocate for yourself. Tell these people that you can do a thing, or it's not a bad thing to make people aware that you have skills.
Yeah. And this is like a thing that my sister told me some time ago, where she was like, don't say no for other people, which is essentially what you're doing when you're not reaching out, when you're not putting yourself out there. You're assuming people are saying no, so then you don't do the thing. And obviously, it's like every day it's still a challenge. And it's like, even when I'm sending emails to people like cold outreach, I'm like, they don't want to hear from me. But then sometimes you hear back and you're like, oh, they did want to hear from me. And like, I wouldn't have known that if I didn't do it. So it is just like, you got to put yourself out there because no one's really looking for you, unfortunately.
No, yeah. I mean, you are the person who's leading the charge for your work, and it's funny the thing you said earlier about submitting to contests, and like you maybe didn't win the contest. You're like, okay, my work wasn't to the level that it needed to be to win. After having read for the contest that I read for, I know that that even isn't a thing that I can tell myself anymore, because reading it really is opinion. Like
Hmm.
obviously, people can utilize structure and like, okay, yeah, the third act isn't there, or the third act is weak, or the second act's too short, or all those things. But ultimately, 150 people can read it, and not all 150 people are going to agree. So I think there are good lessons to learn from those times in which your work doesn't achieve what you want it to achieve. But I also tried to start telling myself, like, it doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah.
Maybe something's not working.
It just might not be someone else's taste, or it might not be
Right.
what that specific fellowship, it doesn't align with the mission of that organization, or there's just different stories they want to share that year. And most of
Yeah.
these fellowships, well, I don't want to say most, but a lot of these fellowships might only have two people reading your script. That is such a small sample size, so you can't let like a win or a rejection like indicate how you are, because it's like I'll get placements or I'll get into certain fellowships and I won't get into certain stuff, and it's not like, oh, I wasn't good enough for this but I'm good enough for that. It's just like, it just so happened the people reading my thing liked my work and resonated with it.
Yeah. And I think maybe previously I would have told myself that it is a little disheartening to think that there are more factors at play, rather than just, is this good, or is it not good enough, or is it bad, or whatever. But I actually find that really comforting now,
Mm,
because the idea that I can submit something, and if somebody says no, I can be like, well, that doesn't mean it's bad. Like, there's all these other factors, maybe some I don't even know about, that could have potentially led to this decision to say no. And that's fine. Like, it just means I'm not going to have this opportunity. I'll go to the next one.
yeah.
I found it a lot more comforting now than I would have previously.
Yeah, I feel like I constantly have to remind myself like creativity is not a meritocracy, and like this industry is not a meritocracy. There's no like, you got an A plus plus, so now your thing's going to be made. It's just like everything's subjective, and that's just life. And like I feel like yeah, I had to get away from that, I guess, school mentality because, like I said, I was a straight A student. So I'm like, why am I not succeeding if this isn't the best or that person's thing isn't the most well structured thing? Da 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 da. It's like, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's the story. And that's it really what matters.
Yep. Well, speaking of story, let's talk about the mock writers room that you did. You also got to do actual staged versions of the
Yes.
screenplays that you wrote with actual actors. So I would really want to talk about those two things and how those things affected your view of your writing. And then also if you took those experiences and were like, okay, I'm now definitely going to change some of the things that I wrote. And if there were really easy leaping off or points that you could leap off of, or if you felt maybe more conflicted about some of the stuff you had written.
Yeah, I think to the point of the mock writers room, I feel like the big thing with that, um, so the way it was run was that Michael, the director of the program, he was our showrunner, and then all of the rest of us were staff writers, right? So that was my first experience writing to the vision of the showrunner. We're all pitching ideas, or we're all listening to what he wants to do for the season and where he wants his characters to be or what the relations are, and we can pitch stuff, and ultimately he's going to decide what works, and then we're going to keep pitching to that vision. So I feel like that was the big learning point from that. And I think, especially for television, so much of it is like mapping out the character relationships throughout the season, throughout the show journey. Obviously, this is a mock writer's experience, so I that's from my knowledge of doing this. But yeah, I think it's like it really showed me the importance of relationships and how every season you want the different character relationships to change, and how are they going to grow, how are they going to come apart, how are they going to resolve these different things, and the plot is kind of serving those character relationships. I mean, I do think it was a mix of like, oh, what are fun plot ideas and what are fun character relationship ideas, but at the end of the day, I think in television especially, it's like those character relationships are the most important. So that was helpful in my own writing to be like, oh, this is all fun and games, but like, what are we really talking about here? What are the relationships that we really care about at the end of the day? And then I think with the stage reading, it was so fun. So my pilot was a half-hour dark comedy set in the world of K-pop about a girl that goes undercover to try to take down this entire Korean media company. And I think it was really awesome. We got to work with a casting director, Karashit Rosenbaum, and we basically wrote breakdowns of our characters, and she sent us people that she thought would be a great fit. And I feel like even in that act of writing the character descriptions and seeing how it translated to her, like if it was like, oh, perfect, I explained perfectly what I wanted and that's what I got, or it's like sometimes you don't even know who your character is until, like, maybe it's a little generic, or maybe you're thinking it's one way, but then when you get these breakdowns of these actors and you're seeing their work, you kind of maybe have a different idea of who they could be. And definitely for one of my main characters, he was kind of a blank slate. He was a little just like serving the plot, like very exposition-y. But once we found that actor, I actually went back and rewrote a lot of his dialogue, because I just could more clearly see who he was and like what his goals were and like how he was moving through the world. So I thought that was helpful. And obviously, when you're writing, you want to have your characters as clearly defined as possible, but like being open to that change, and also like embracing that actors are going to bring a lot to the table. And obviously you hear from all these TV shows like Abbott or whatever, any great show, where they're like, yeah, the characters, we kind of pulled that from this person actually said that, or this is kind of how they are. So I thought that was like a fun aspect of it.
That does make me wonder. So you've mentioned Abbott Elementary a couple times. Is that along the lines of the stuff that you were already writing, or what did Hillman help maybe further define the stuff that you felt you were working towards? Or kind of talk to me about your concept of yourself as a writer
Interesting.
going into and out of Hillman.
Yeah, so I my mockumentary, my half-hour mockumentary set in the Department of Sanitation, I think is the closest to Abbott Elementary, because it's very much about like giving hope back to the people, like how can we as a society come together as a community? It's like found family in the workplace. So I think that was kind of like pulling from Abbott, pulling from Parks and Rec. um, yeah, very hopey changey kind of vibe. And then I think in Hillman, I wanted to have a little bit of a departure from my comedy, like the Broad City type vibe, Abbott Elementary, and go a little bit darker, because I think the great thing with Hillman is that they're really open to you exploring different lanes, or really like giving you that structure and that guidance so you feel comfortable trying something different. So I'm still a comedy girl at heart, or I feel like I always just like to use humor in my storytelling, even if it is in a drama. But yeah, so I wanted to try writing a dark comedy because I felt like that was kind of the next level to bridge into maybe like a drama. And it was a really great experience. I think that it was really tricky finding that balance. And ultimately, I think like one of the best pieces of advice I got from my mentor T was like, just go as far as you can in both directions, like the darkest, like serious, gut wrenching stuff, like watch a bunch of those, and then watch just like the silliest, absurdist comedies, and then you're kind of just like figuring out where you want to exist on that spectrum. But yeah, it's a hard balance to find, I think, dark comedy. And even while I was writing, I was like, is this dark comedy? I don't know, how's it landing? And it's like, I think once we got to the stage reading and I saw the actors doing it live, I was like, okay, cool. I feel like this achieved the tone that I wanted to, but it's
Yeah.
not cut and dry.
Gosh, so going forward from there, from graduating from Hillman, now you are a 2026 Writers Guild Foundation support staff trainee. So tell me what that means for anyone out there
Yes.
who doesn't know, and then what that's meant and been like for you.
Yeah, so that was awesome because I think there's a misconception. You do a fellowship, your whole life's going to change. All these managers are going to reach out. Everyone's going to be like, "We want to buy your script. We want to make your stuff. We're going to have you stuffed." And the truth is like, again, it's just another stepping stone. It's another way for you to build your craft and obviously have a new writing sample, new experiences. It did get a little bit of traction. But then, yeah, I'm still applying to fellowships. And then I got into the Writers Guild Foundation program. I think towards the end of 2025. It started at the beginning of this year. It's really awesome. It's run by two awesome people, Debbie and Clay. They've both been staff writers, but they both had a journey into the industry coming up through the support staff. So whether that's being a writer's PA, being a writer's assistant, script coordinator, showrunner's assistant, there's a bunch of roles kind of under that support staff umbrella. But in the program, they're really focusing on teaching us the skills of either being a writer's assistant or a script coordinator, which, to be like transparent, I had no idea what a script coordinator did. I was like, that's a title. Great. Writer's assistant, I think, was a little more clear. You're in the room, you're taking notes, you're making sure you're taking down everything the writers say. But even with that, it's like you're learning so much about potentially the hierarchy of the room, the politics, because again, you're really going in there. Everyone is trying to reach the showrunner's vision, helping to craft that. So, what's the best way to do that? What are the good questions to ask this person, who to ask about this type of thing? I think it's just really preparing you so that when you're in the room, you don't feel overwhelmed. Because once a show is, in the writer's room, it's like you have deadlines and you got to turn things around, and it's really stressful. So you don't necessarily have the time at a normal job where it's like you get 2 weeks of training and you get to talk to HR and you watch all these videos. It's like, no, you're in the room. So they just want to make sure we're prepared for that. And then for the script coordinator role, that's been a little bit even more comprehensive of like learning about like different colored pages and production, like what's being sent to the studio, what's being sent to the network, like all these different drafts. It's all stuff, again, that I was unfamiliar with. So we're learning a lot of terminology, and we're in final draft doing these exercises. They give us like homework assignments, and we have to like proofread stuff. We got to make sure we're naming things correctly, or we're distributing things to the studio and the network and all that stuff. And I think it's really helpful because, again, I think it'd be really stressful to just do that, getting thrown into an actual production.
Right.
Because production assistants, work when they're in the writer's room, but also then they can oftentimes be the person that's on set. So it's like, yeah, really just learning all those skills. And then we have a lot of awesome guest speakers that come in that have talked to our class, like showrunners, staff writers, support staff people. So it's been a wonderful experience.
So how long will you be doing that?
So we are ending in mid-April. So about a month left of the program,
Yeah.
which is exciting. Yeah.
So what's next?
So I think that they are potentially pairing us up with mentors, which is exciting. I think the rule is we cannot ask them to read our scripts. It's more, trying to help the or get them to, just share their experience being support staff and just guiding us through that journey, which I think will be awesome. And then they're also really good about recommending people for jobs. I think that's a big part of the program. A lot of people know about the Writers Guild Foundation and that they do this training. So a lot of showrunners will come and be like, hey, we need a writer's assistant, we need a script coordinator, and they'll send out people's resumes. So, hopefully the next step for me will be to get a job as a writer's assistant or a script coordinator. And then outside of that, I got into like a writer's retreat in Italy through Roadmap Writers, which is fun. Yeah, it's like 1 week. We're in Italy. We get to meet with all these executives, meet with writers, and I'm working on an hour long, or not an hour long. I'm working on a feature script, which is exciting. So I think that will be like great time for me to really focus on that. We're doing like a bit of a table read there. And then I just got into another program called Pre Rainbow Pages. It's like for pre WGA writers, and we get paired up with writers that are in the WGA. I think like at the staff writer level or the executive story level editor, and we get paired up with them. I think maybe by the time this comes out, they'll have announced the pairings. I don't know yet personally, so I'm excited. We're meeting tomorrow for like our kickoff. So, yeah, I think this time in my life is just like continuing to receive mentorship, continuing learning, continuing writing, and just seeing what happens.
Yeah, well, you've done awesome stuff already. Have some awesome stuff coming up as we're wrapping up here. One thing I like to talk about to writers is romanticizing our process
Mm.
and, and just talking about the ways in which we're supporting ourselves as we're writing. So, especially for someone who it seems like you'll be traveling a lot. So, is it easy for you to get to the page, to get back to the page, and kind of what's your process? Like, how do you make sure you're supporting yourself as a writer who's actively writing?
Yeah, gosh, I feel like as a writer, the most helpful thing is deadlines, which is why I still apply to fellowships, why I still apply to all this stuff, because I'm like, this is the deadline and I need to do it. Otherwise, it's so hard to get accountability. And I've done like accountability sessions with friends where or all of us were working on a feature, we're all working on a pilot, but sometimes you just get off sync and it's hard. So I feel like the deadlines are the most helpful to me. I think also like just knowing what works for you. I feel like I used to be so hard on myself to be like, oh, why do I always need to like have movement in the morning and do affirmations and then like do my morning pages and like listen to music? Like, why can't I just sit there and write whenever? And it's like, it's okay. Like, lean into your process, know what works for you, and use it to your advantage. So, I feel like that's been the most helpful for me, just embracing and accepting that I need what I need to get my writing done.
That is a good thing to remember. Well, I appreciate you coming by and taking the time and telling everyone about all of your awesome experiences and good luck with everything going forward.
Yeah, thank you. I really wanted to come on here just to share with other people that are like pre WGA and like in kind of the early phases, maybe at the fellowship stage and trying to get to the next level. Cause, I feel like you don't hear as many people that are in the process of becoming. So yeah, it was really fun to share and reflect on my experiences.
And those experiences are very unique, but also very helpful for anyone out there who is where Juliette is right now, pre WGA, producing a lot of work, getting it out into people's hands, into eyes and heads out there. So if this is you or this is someone you know, definitely share this episode with them and say, hey, here's one of the ways that you can, plan your projects going forward and almost a way that you can intentionally think about your career. We talked a lot about self-advocacy, and that's so important for me. It's one of the things that I want to try to get to more on the show, just the ways in which we as writers or creatives in general are okay with telling people, hey, I'm good at this thing. I can do this thing. So I was glad that Juliette and I got a chance to talk about it. Thank you so much to Juliette for stopping by. Go to JulietteLinWrites.com. That's JulietteLin Writes. Hillman Grad Foundation is at HillmanGradFoundation.com. Make sure you check my stuff out at AustinRWilson.com or Substack. It's AustinRWilson.substack.com. And let me know what you think of the show. I'm on Substack a lot, so feel free to hop on there and send me a message, subscribe, follow me, do all those things, and share this, please. I think a lot of the stuff that Juliette talks about is really, really important, especially for people who have already graduated or even are getting ready to graduate with a film degree or are trying to move into screenwriting of any sort, and dispelling some of the myths about what it is maybe like you don't just walk off of campus with a diploma straight onto a Hollywood backlot and then you're making movies. Like, there's a lot of work, and it's getting harder, obviously, but I think she has a lot of awesome stuff to talk about, and she's definitely someone that you should keep your eyes on because she has a lot of stuff that she's going to potentially get made someday. So definitely keep your eyes on Juliette's career. And also, yeah, watch out for my show because I have 3 more interviews that I'm recording between the start of next month and the end of next month. So it's already a pretty crazy year. And I'll be reading scripts for the Austin Film Festival starting next week. Thanks for coming by. I'll talk to you soon.